Hi there. I'm here today to return something to you. It may not immediately seem familiar, but if what's here speaks to you, please consider this a call to action for collaboration. According to current understanding in number theory and physics, what we're about to take a look at doesn't exist. These geometries are embedded into our number line by palindromic code. Number line meaning just numbers as you would count. The difference is some numbers are stacked here instead of just being one after another. The stacks are the result of turning the integers in the gaps or spaces between prime numbers 90 degrees. These are called prime gaps. So each prime gap becomes a radius. What you're seeing is potentially a more accurate perspective of our number line. I also call it the pi line because of the circles. Primes are listed in order along the bottom here. These are numbers indivisible except by 1 and themselves. They act as spacers between each radius. The radii are made of composite and semi-prime numbers. These numbers are divisible by more than 1 in themselves. Each radius contains an odd quantity of numbers. What we're looking at is likely the most tangible candidate for the unified field we've come across in recent history, and it may reveal primes as its catalyst. The implications this information carries are massive and possibly a little overwhelming. You've heard the saying that we're all connected. This unifies all of us. A bit about me. My name is Azra. I'm from the Midwest, love animals, hiking, art, design, and traveling. I went to university for sociology, but ended up leaving early in 2001, only 24 credits away from a Bachelor of Science because I couldn't pass math. By the next year, I moved out to the Southwest. My career for the following decade in retail management had no way to prepare me for what was just around the corner. Until 2013, I thought I'd lived a relatively normal life. But at the time, just over a year after moving to California to take the best job of my career, memories I had blocked out for approximately 25 years began resurfacing. As a result, I became extremely sick and even started having seizures. At the time, I had no idea I was simultaneously beginning a spiritual awakening. I was treated for something I didn't have, which led to a spinal injury and ultimately a near-death experience, or NDE. Following it, I suddenly began producing this mathematical physics. I learned sometimes gifts come in funny packages, which is what brings me here. It's my honor to reintroduce you to this world within our number line. The time is now for us to begin reclaiming this ancient, sacred, universal knowledge. Someone I shared this with early on said it was a revelation and will impact all future scientific endeavor. I believe that to be accurate. This will help prepare our consciousness for larger realities. You don't need a background in math or physics to understand it's a missing link for humanity. If, like me, as I began this journey, you had no idea what a prime number was or dislike math in general enough simply not to care, I'm asking for you to just try to remain open. Math and physics aside, what's here is proof we're part of a much, much bigger picture than most of us can even begin to imagine. Ultimately, looking at this without the mind from a place that you're able to feel into it from will be most beneficial anyhow, but the mind will also be provided for in this overview. The main topics that we're going to take a look at are the unified field, what it means, what we can use it for, and what led up to this. One outstanding problem currently facing physics is how to combine quantum theory and general relativity to reconcile a unified field. Currently, the laws we see governing large bodies like planets differ from those we see at a quantum level. Given the scalability of this discovery, the patterns within our number line may be the bridge we've been searching for. Applicable on each order of magnitude, our number line allows us the freedom to measure in Planck length or Parsec while preserving the algebraic palindromic code embedded within it. The first section of palindromic code here runs from 5 through 13. The quantities of primes and composites composing it are shown just below. These are palindromic because they are the same sequence of numbers forward and backward. From this view, we can see that while primes occur independently, they act in pairs, which are connected by these arcs. I refer to these pairs as prime partners. Prime partners may be wave-particle duality made visible. Occurring symmetrically surrounding these center points, prime partners follow an A plus C equals 2B formula. 5 plus 13 is 18, double the center point, 9, but the next external primes, 3 and 17, sum to 20, so they don't belong to this code segment. 5 and 13 are the extent or the bounds of the symmetry here, so they are the threshold primes. It's these primes specifically that break spacetime down into pieces. Each section of palindromic code begins and ends at the threshold primes, so prime and composite quantities are symmetric surrounding these center points. These findings soar beyond prime predictability and encryption, suggesting prime partners are responsible for the quantization of spacetime, and therefore gravitational quantization as well. Identical code segments are shown here in matching color. 75% of these coded geometries to A81 repeat at least one time before you hit 2000. Considering primes are still believed to be mostly random, an individual code segment then could be likened to throwing a handful of sand in the air and it landing as a sandcastle. The repetition of these identical code segments would be then like throwing another handful of sand in the air and it landing as an identical sandcastle, hardly random. Prime gap analysis into the millions, billions, and beyond shows these trends likely continue indefinitely. The four forces of nature composing the unified field are expressed through our number line. The weak force shows prime partners before they're compacted. The strong force may be the agent compacting primes, creating composite radii, which in turn birth the 3D toroidal geometry associated with electromagnetism. Gravity relates to the center points of these geometries and is likely the inspiration behind the strong force. Finally, by rotating our infinite number line in a 3D environment, a single, unified field is revealed. This is a range of approximately 2,000 numbers just before 1.3 million. As we attain the perspective of the concentric circles, which is always there, we can see that they form an infinite singularity. How could this connect to black holes or quantum channels? We could be witnessing the time dilation and length contraction of special relativity in this rotation. Our current understanding of number, measurement, and time in a linear fashion appears to be comparable to the cohesion and continuity of a dilapidated building. For example, our linear number line is a diminished version of its true state and parallels the decay and entropy of the weak force. Our understanding is in tatters, but it won't remain that way for much longer. Can you imagine watching the entropy of this house in reverse as it's restored back to its original form? That's what we're witnessing in the number line as primes compact and the radii form between them. This visually stunning discovery illuminates how nature alchemizes chaos into order. It allows us to see separation unify. For our understanding to be more robust, we need to incorporate the structural qualities and relationships of numbers themselves. From the top down in this image, space is contracting as the radius forms. Could this connect to how particles form as well? From the bottom up, space is expanding. This may relate to particle decay. For these symmetric geometries to form, a point in the past has to know what a point in the future is doing in order to remain symmetric to it, and vice versa. Does this speak to the coexistence of past, present, and future? We would be remiss if we failed to scrutinize potential parallels between what we're witnessing in our number line and ideas currently accepted by mainstream physics. This provides a tangible, fundamental organic structure in which to integrate them. It's very likely this code details the Higgs field, which is said to give particles mass. If so, it will likely expand understanding in many areas, including special and general relativity. And it will connect the work of many great minds, from Einstein to Walter Russell, who had an experience very similar to my own. Prime gaps may even relate to the accelerating expansion of our universe. Research shows the higher up the number line you go, prime gaps get larger because primes become less frequent. That would translate here into massive radii, and that would look like an acceleration compared to the other smaller radii preceding them. These predetermined prime-partner relationships span all distances, measurable or unmeasurable. That being the case, on the edge of the infinite, even with no external point in which to measure to, relationships of this unified field are still present in the unmanifest. A unified field must also include consciousness. Could we consider using the number line as a template to understand it through? Ultimately, the paramount question becomes, what is the origin of this coded precision design? So what can we do with this? Our number line is a point source of time from which math and physics are born, maybe even our universe. There is a spark gap in it. At minimum, it provides a platform for deeper understanding of the interconnectivity between the constants, theories, laws, and functions of math and physics. We can trace them all back to their source here and see how they're interconnected. Unifying these following pieces will help revolutionize many technologies that could open doors for humanity. Some say time doesn't exist. We all have our opinions, but this work makes one thing very clear. Time appears to be rolled up space. In the Mod 12 layout of a clock, all primes over 3 self-organize on spokes 1, 5, 7, and 11, indicated by the purple boxes here. This speaks to the 6n plus minus 1 formula known for primes, and also accounts for the semi-primes being included with that formula, as they allow all 5-count radii and higher to manifest. That formula, driven by these discovered helical prime threads, weaves through space and time. They appear to marry number theory with genetics and consciousness. This work likely also solves the Riemann hypothesis. Prime threads also connect to an incredible potential for free energy development. This is where the collaboration begins. Fractal torus scalability would be one aspect of that, of which Fibonacci, phi, music, harmonics, and resonance are vital components. The integration of which may allow us to understand pi and its closest approximations as being byproducts of the compression of space-time itself, and may be key in understanding how gravity expresses through each radius, whose center points may be comparable to suns. This could explain why the inverse square law, describing gravity and so many other phenomena, shows up in the nesting of the spheres. The radii speak to holography and interference patterns as a substrate of spacetime. What does this tell us about the nature of reality? Particle and antiparticle relationships, quantum entanglement, and uncertainty principle all find footing here, as does loop quantum gravity. Carlo Rovelli and James Gates, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. The fields of information theory, encryption, error-correcting code, and quantum computing also have footing in the number line, where sacred geometry and reality merge. Humanity is experiencing a massive shift right now. We're ascending. It's evident on many levels that old ways are crumbling. We can also use what's in our number line and the information stemming from it on a spiritual level. It can help us in transitioning from the 3D reality we've been living in for a very long time into this new 5D reality many are now currently starting to anchor into. This is a useful aid for awakening, healing, remembrance, and activations as we ascend. Ultimately, this information is here to help prepare our consciousness for the fact that we are not alone in this universe. Eventually, it will help bring us up to speed with our galactic family and neighbors. As my personal awakening process began, I started recalling my own off-world origins. I began remembering working on embedding this information into the number line with a group of other beings before showing up here, prior to being in this body on this planet. Despite that truth, before the near-death experience, I had no conscious memory of nor interest in prime numbers. In fact, when this information started coming through me, I kept thinking, who the heck am I to have this information? The awakening process can definitely make you question your sanity at points. These otherworldly memories were stunning, but nonetheless real. And this math is that proof. I have no background in any of this here. I came into this life with it, but then I forgot I did. Many souls are eager to get this information to you. It will require input from a number of sources to validate. If you haven't yet began your awakening process, you're probably thinking what I'm saying sounds completely bonkers, and that's okay. I did too at first, but now I remember. Once your awakening begins, though, you'll find this information to be a useful resource. Even after starting to remember and understand that we're all multidimensional beings, these truths remain breathtaking. In incarnating, we typically agree to forget much of who we are. A history of trauma further disassociated me from my truth, so my awakening process was more tumultuous than many. This next section could be triggering to some. If it wasn't my own story, I would probably have trouble believing it myself. At my new job in California, a sentence was said to me multiple times over the course of about 6 months. Ultimately, it triggered memory from when I was little. Suddenly, violent and disturbing memories I could barely believe were mine began resurfacing. My body started shutting down. Lights were too bright, sound was too loud. This is when the seizures started. Fairly quickly, I was forced to move into an apartment with someone for help. Medical doctors had no idea what to do with me, and although I didn't have it, I was treated for ankylosing spondylitis, considered a Native American spinal condition, which is fabled after the Kokopelli. I was put on 7 medications, which caused a severe spinal injury and led to my near-death experience. Following the NDE, I began remembering in grade school math class, hearing things from what I now understand was spirit. Look at the numbers to the left and the right of 12. So I started looking again, and it led me to this. I had this information as a kid. During the NDE, I was also given someone's name. Even though my experience is extreme, I wanted to share what it looks like when people who've disassociated due to trauma begin remembering. Given the fact that humanity is awakening, it'd be great if doctors were able to recognize this, because they'll be seeing more of it. I hope this insight leads to the awareness, understanding, and ultimately help for others I didn't receive. Awakening and ascension already parallel coming out of amnesia. Trauma adds more layers to it. At 36 years old, I began remembering that for almost a decade of my childhood, sexual trafficking, rape, torture, being drugged, and satanic ritual abuse were typical parts of my reality. I had blocked it out in order to survive. No one wants to believe kids go through this kind of stuff. Sometimes the contrast between realities is too great, so we look away. The fact is, this is occurring within institutions we're told to trust, which further complicates our ability to internalize it. To change these aspects of our world, though, we must look at them. I was not the only kid there. In tandem with all the things we can't stomach, miracles are happening simultaneously. As soon as I moved into that apartment, my life was forever changed. I realized I had a dream in about 84 or 85 where I was led through that space by a Native American male. He pointed out these feathers that were hanging on the wall there and said something about their order of importance. Then he showed me to this room as it was being prepared for me to move into. I walked in, saw it like this, and it was identical to how it was in the dream. I had forgotten about it completely to that moment and became immediately overwhelmed. Later, I was physically handed the feathers from the dream I had about 25 years prior, 2,000 miles away. They detailed my path, including the spinal problem. The Kokopelli resurfaced here as well. Even more wild, these weren't yet created at the time I had the dream and were only put on that wall in 2001 after a Chippewa woman requested them to be made in 2000. This also speaks to the coexistence of past, present, and future. In another dream around 1993, a transparent head told me many things about this work. It was showing me about the clock, and then it morphed into the stone circle map, which actually turned out to be real. The drawing is how I remembered what I was shown in the dream. The mountains were my memory of the brown lines in that lower image. I'm leaving out the name of the professor who did the telemetry to protect the site. It says it's a functional calendar site, and it was still accurate in 2013. This information in our number line is part of Native American prophecy. It's directly from the Star Nations. We come into these lifetimes with great knowing, quickly unlearning what we brought with us. I now remember having this information as a toddler and attempting to communicate it as soon as I could hold a pen. It's my hope this helps activate your soul's memories. In summary, the palindromic code embedded into our number line is likely the most tangible foundation for the unified field we've come across in recent history. As the discovered prime partners are compacted, gravity is revealed, the internal view of which provides us the unified field. These geometries force us to consider the coexistence of past, present, and future. The coded geometric relationships are present on all orders of magnitude. They exist between and inside each atom. You can find them stretching the distance from Earth to Andromeda, and at the same time, they're present between you and I right now. They span the gaps transmitting sparks between synapses in our brain, allowing us to process these images and words. They're literally part of us, part of everything. This sacred universal coded geometry unifies all of us, both on-world and off. With profound humility and the deepest gratitude, I am honored on behalf of many to return what's always been yours. You can find more information at cosmicporch.com and a link to YouTube videos as this exploration of our number line continues to unfold. To collaborate, subscribe under the Contact tab with your email for a Zoom discussion link. Also available to assist your and others' awakening and ascension processes are mandalas made from the code segments within our number line. This wearable chakra apparel has been intuitively channeled for each chakra. If you feel a connection to this information, trust it. Many souls carry pieces of this puzzle. This is just the beginning.